She could blink and make anything happen, but no magic could stop time for the cast of I Dream of Jeannie. Behind the laughter, the bottle, and one of TV's most unforgettable genies were lives that changed in ways fans never expected. Some found lasting fame, some quietly disappeared, and some beloved faces are no longer with us. Stay tuned until the end, because the truth might surprise you. Major Anthony Nelson was played by Larry Hagman at the age of 33. Clean-cut, serious, and constantly one blink away from total disaster, Tony Nelson was the NASA astronaut trying to keep a perfectly normal life while hiding the least normal secret in Florida. He wanted discipline, order, and a respectable career. But Jeannie's magic kept turning every normal day into something no astronaut training could ever explain. Larry Hagman passed away in 2012 at the age of 81 after complications from acute myeloid leukemia. Before Dallas turned him into the ruthless J.R. Ewing, he was Tony Nelson, the poor NASA major trying to look normal while a genie kept wrecking his day. That is a pretty amazing jump. From sitcom magic to one of TV's most famous villains. Tony was funny because he never really controlled the situation. He acted like the sensible one. But Jeannie had the magic, Roger had the bad ideas, and Dr. Bellows was always one step away from catching him. His panic was half the show. Major Roger Healy was played by Bill Daly at the age of 38. Goofy, nosy, and way too excited by Tony's magical secret. Roger was the friend who made every problem bigger without even trying. He meant well, sure, but the moment he found out about Jeannie, Tony's quiet NASA life basically had no chance. Bill Daly died in 2018 at the age of 91 from natural causes. Long after Roger was done making Tony's life harder, he became Howard Borden on The Bob Newhart Show, where that same awkward, slightly confused energy found a perfect second home. His comedy never felt forced. He could get a laugh just by looking like he had wandered into the wrong conversation. Roger was pure sitcom trouble in the best way. He was the guy who would absolutely make the wrong wish, ask the wrong question, or walk in at the worst possible second. And honestly, without Roger making everything worse, Jeannie's magic would not have been nearly as fun. Dr. Alfred Bellows was played by Hayden Rorke at the age of 54. Suspicious, polished, and always just a few seconds away from proving Tony Nelson was hiding something, Bellows was the perfect sitcom watchdog. He was not the villain, he was just the one normal man at NASA who kept seeing impossible things and somehow could never get anyone else to believe him. Hayden Rorke passed away in 1987 at the age of 76 after multiple myeloma. Fans still remember that wide-eyed Bellows stare whenever Jeannie's magic got too close to being exposed. Before and after I Dream of Jeannie, he appeared in shows like I Love Lucy, The Twilight Zone, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Love Boat. Bellows made the whole trick work. Tony needed someone official to fool, and Bellows gave every blink, puff of smoke, and bad explanation a real consequence. The fun was watching him be absolutely right, and still look completely ridiculous trying to prove it. General Martin Peterson was played by Barton MacLane at the age of 62. Loud, tough, and full of old-school military pressure, Peterson brought a harder edge into Tony's already impossible life. He was the kind of general who expected straight answers, which was a terrible match for an astronaut secretly living with a magical genie. Barton MacLane died in 1969 at the age of 66 after double pneumonia. His final years were still tied to I Dream of Jeannie, but his career had already stretched across decades of tough guy roles, westerns, crime films, and studio-era Hollywood. He had the face and voice of a man who could make any room feel like an interrogation. Peterson was funny because he made Tony sweat in a different way. Jeannie caused the chaos, Bellows suspected the truth, but Peterson brought military authority into the mess. One wrong blink from Jeannie and Tony suddenly had to explain magic to a general who had no patience for nonsense. General Winfield Schaefer was played by Vinton Hayworth at the age of 59. Formal, fussy, and wonderfully easy to alarm, Schaefer stepped into the general role with a lighter kind of comic energy. He still had military authority, but there was something more nervous and brittle about him, which made Jeannie's magic feel even more likely to send him spinning. Vinton Hayworth died in 1970 at the age of 63 after a heart attack. Fans later remembered him as one of the show's final season generals, but his career went much further back through radio, film, and television. He was also the uncle of Rita Hayworth, which gives his old Hollywood connection a fun little extra twist. Schaefer fit the later Jeannie years nicely. By then, the show knew exactly how to play its formula. Tony panics, Jeannie blinks, and some poor authority figure walks straight into the madness. Schaefer was one more official man trying to keep order in a world where order never stood a chance. Amanda Bellows was played by Emmaline Henry at the age of 37. Elegant, curious, and often a little more socially relaxed than her husband, Amanda gave Dr. Bellows a funny second layer. She could smile through a strange situation, enjoy the company, and still somehow make Bellows look even more frantic when he tried to explain what he thought he had seen. Emmaline Henry passed away in 1979 at the age of 50 after a brain tumor. Fans remember her as the woman who made the Bellows household feel less stiff and much more fun. Before I Dream of Jeannie, she worked in comedy, music, and television, and she had the kind of polished 1960s sitcom charm that made Amanda feel instantly at home. Amanda was great because she gave the show a different kind of reaction to Jeannie's chaos. Bellows panicked and chased proof, but Amanda often floated through the madness with a smile. That contrast made their scenes feel lighter, like the show was winking at us while Bellows lost his mind. Bartender was played by Joseph V. Perry at the age of 57. Friendly, practical, and dropped into the kind of odd little situation I Dream of Jeannie loved. The bartender brought that classic sitcom, regular guy energy. He was not part of NASA or magic, which made it even funnier when Tony's strange world brushed against normal everyday life. Joseph V. Perry passed away in 2000 at the age of 69 after kidney cancer. Fans of old television may not always know his name, but they know the type of face, the working character actor who could step into a scene and make it feel instantly grounded. His career included roles in The Streets of San Francisco, The Rockford Files, and many other TV favorites. Characters like the bartender helped Jeannie's world feel bigger than Tony's house and NASA. The magic was funniest when it spilled into normal places, where ordinary people had no idea what they had just walked into. One confused look from a side character could make the whole gag land better. Arabian Reverend was played by Benny Rubin at the age of 66. The role had that broad, old-fashioned sitcom style the show sometimes leaned into, especially when Jeannie's magical background came into the story. It was a small part, but it fit the playful, exaggerated fantasy tone that 1960s television often used when it wanted everything to feel bigger than real life. Benny Rubin passed away in 1986 at the age of 87 after a heart attack. Fans of classic comedy history may remember him from far beyond I Dream of Jeannie. His career went all the way back to vaudeville, radio, early movies, and countless television appearances, making him one of those old pros who carried decades of show business timing into even a quick scene. Rubin's appearance feels like a little piece of older comedy sneaking into a space-age sitcom. I Dream of Jeannie was already a mix of NASA, magic, romance, and goofy misunderstandings, and performers like him added that throwback vaudeville flavor that made the show feel even more retro now. Mr. Murdoch was played by Woodrow Parfrey at the age of 43. Nervy, odd, and perfect for the kind of weird little situations I Dream of Jeannie loved, Murdoch brought that classic character-actor flavor into Tony's magical mess. He had the sort of face that could make a simple scene feel slightly strange before Jeannie even blinked. Woodrow Parfrey passed away in 1984 at the age of 61 after a heart attack. Fans of old movies and television may recognize him from much darker places than Jeannie's bright sitcom world, including Planet of the Apes, Papillon, and Dirty Harry. He was one of those actors who could show up for a few minutes and make the scene feel sharper. Murdoch fits the fun of the show because Jeannie's magic always worked best when normal people were pulled into it. Tony could panic, Roger could make it worse, and a side character like Murdoch could walk in just long enough to make the whole situation feel even more ridiculous. Sargent was played by Don Mitchell at the age of 22. Young, serious, and neatly placed inside the NASA military world around Tony Nelson, the Sergeant helped keep the show tied to its space-age setting. I Dream of Jeannie was full of magic, but it still needed uniforms, offices, orders, and people who made Tony's job feel official. Don Mitchell died in 2013 at the age of 70 from natural causes. Fans who remember him outside I Dream of Jeannie usually know him best from Ironside, where he played Mark Sanger and became part of one of television's most familiar crime drama teams. The fun with a role like the Sergeant is that he represents the normal world Tony is supposed to live in. That world has rules, ranks, and procedures. Jeannie, of course, has none of that. Put those two things in the same scene, and the comedy almost writes itself. King Kamehameha was played by Michael Ansara at the age of 43. Regal, intense, and far more dramatic than the usual sitcom guest, Ansara brought a big presence into Jeannie's fantasy world. Even in a playful role, he had that deep voice and serious screen energy that made him feel larger than the gag around him. Michael Ansara passed away in 2013 at the age of 91 after complications from Alzheimer's disease. Classic TV fans knew him from many places: Cochise in Broken Arrow, Kang in Star Trek, and of course his real-life marriage to Barbara Eden, which gives his Jeannie appearance an extra layer of nostalgia. Ansara had the kind of presence that made even silly 1960s television feel a little grander. I Dream of Jeannie was built for magic, misunderstandings, and bright comedy, but when someone like him walked in, the fantasy side suddenly felt bigger, stranger, and more old Hollywood. Haji was played by Abraham Sofair at the age of 69. Wise, mysterious, and carrying that old fantasy story feeling, Haji belonged to the magical side of I Dream of Jeannie. He was the kind of character who could walk in and make Jeannie's world feel bigger than Tony's living room, like there were rules, powers, and ancient trouble sitting just behind all the sitcom chaos. Abraham Sofair died in 1988 at the age of 91 after congestive heart failure. Fans of classic television may remember him from a long career full of dignified, intense roles, including appearances in Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, and many film and stage productions. He had the kind of voice and presence that made even a short scene feel important. Haji added a little mythology to the show. I Dream of Jeannie was usually light and goofy, but characters like him reminded viewers that Jeannie did not just come from a bottle as a punchline. She came from a whole magical world, and every now and then, that world showed up at Tony's door. Alan Kerr was played by Paul Lynde at the age of 39. Sharp, dramatic, and loaded with that unmistakable Paul Lynde delivery, Alan brought a burst of pure comic attitude into I Dream of Jeannie. He did not need much to steal attention. A raised eyebrow, a strange pause, or one perfectly annoyed line could do half the work. Paul Lynde passed away in 1982 at the age of 55 after a heart attack. Fans still remember that cutting voice and wicked comic timing. Long after his Jeannie appearance, he became a huge TV personality through Bewitched, Hollywood Squares, and countless comedy appearances where his sarcasm basically became the whole act. Lynde was made for this kind of 1960s sitcom madness. Jeannie's world already had magic, military secrets, and confused men in suits. Adding Paul Lynde meant the scene got a little sharper and a lot funnier. He was not the lead here, but he knew exactly how to make a few minutes count. Amir Hamid El Yahman was played by Frank DeVol at the age of 54. Grand, theatrical, and dressed for the show's bright fantasy side, the Amir fit right into Jeannie's magical world of royalty, old customs, and over-the-top misunderstandings. He brought that playful, storybook visitor energy that made Tony's normal NASA life look even more impossible. Frank DeVol passed away in 1999 at the age of 88 after congestive heart failure. Fans may know his face from sitcoms, but his real legacy was music. He was a major composer and arranger, creating themes and scores for film and television, including The Brady Bunch, My Three Sons, and Family Affair. The fun thing about DeVol showing up on screen is that he was already shaping television from behind it. In I Dream of Jeannie, he became part of the fantasy circus for a moment, but in the larger TV world, his music helped define what classic American television sounded like. Colonel Abigail Finch was played by Retta Shaw at the age of 53. Stern, loud, and impossible to brush aside, Finch brought a totally different kind of pressure into Tony Nelson's already ridiculous life. She had that no-nonsense military energy that made every blink, puff of smoke, or sudden Jeannie mistake feel like it could turn into an official disaster. Retta Shaw passed away in 1982 at the age of 69 from emphysema. She was one of those performers who could walk into a sitcom and take over the room in about 5 seconds. Before her Jeannie appearance, she had already popped up in The Lucy Show, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and Mary Poppins, usually bringing that big, bossy, scene-stealing energy she did so well. Finch worked best because Tony was always funniest around people he could not charm his way past. Roger might panic, Bellows might investigate, But a tough colonel like Finch made the whole thing feel more dangerous. One wrong magical slip, and Tony's clean NASA image was done for. Congressman Whitcomb was played by Jack Smith at the age of 52. Polished, political, and exactly the kind of important guest Tony did not need anywhere near Jeannie. Whitcomb brought Washington pressure into a show already full of military headaches. The higher the status of the visitor, the harder Tony had to smile, while everything around him quietly went wrong. Jack Smith died in 2006 at the age of 92 after leukemia. Long before this small sitcom role, he had already made his name as a singer and television personality. His biggest TV claim was hosting You Asked For It, one of those early request-based shows that feels almost strange now, but was a real part of American television history. Whitcomb was useful because he raised the stakes without needing much screen time. Jeannie's magic was already risky around Tony's friends, but around politicians and officials, it became a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. That is classic Jeannie comedy, one magical mistake away from national embarrassment. Reporter was played by Arthur Adams at the age of 45. Curious, alert, and ready to turn one strange detail into a story, the reporter was exactly the wrong person to have near Tony's secret. In a sitcom built around hiding a genie from the world, a man paid to ask questions was basically trouble walking through the door. Arthur Adams passed away in 1985 at the age of 77 after cancer. He was not a household name, but he belonged to that old TV world of working actors who could show up, ground a scene, and move the story along without making it feel heavy. Roles like this were small, but they helped keep the episode moving. The reporter gave Tony a simple problem: exposure. Dr. Bellows could suspect him, generals could pressure him, and Roger could make a mess. But a reporter could turn one impossible moment into tomorrow's headline. For a show this silly and bright, that was just enough danger to make the magic funnier. Botanist was played by Chet Stratton at the age of 55. Nervy, precise, and just serious enough to make the joke land, the botanist fit right into the kind of small, strange trouble I Dream of Jeannie loved. A normal expert walks in, Tony tries to act calm, and suddenly Jeannie's magic turns one simple situation into something nobody can explain with a straight face. Chet Stratton died in 1970 at the age of 59 after a heart attack. He had the kind of old-school show business career that feels very different from today's Hollywood. Stage work, radio, movies, and tons of television. He also appeared in shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Munsters, and Hogan's Heroes. The botanist was not a huge role, but that was the fun of Jeannie's world. The show could bring in a serious little guest character, drop them into Tony's magical mess, and let the confusion do the work. Sometimes the funniest person in the scene was just the one trying to stay professional, while everything around them made no sense. Melissa Stone was played by Karen Sharp at the age of 31. Pretty, polished, and caught in one of Tony's most impossible early situations. Melissa was the kind of fiancée who made Jeannie's arrival feel like a real problem, not just a cute magical accident. Tony was already trying to be a respectable astronaut, and then suddenly he had a genie in his house and a fiancée asking perfectly reasonable questions. Currently 91, she has lived most of her later life away from acting. After her screen career, she became closely tied to the legacy of filmmaker Stanley Kramer, her husband, and helped preserve his work and memory after his death. That is a very different chapter from the bright, chaotic sitcom world of Jeannie. Melissa is interesting because she reminds viewers how wild the show's setup really was. Before the magic became part of the routine, Tony had a normal life waiting for him. Career, marriage, respectability, all of it. Then Jeannie blinked her way into the story, and that normal life basically disappeared. Sheila Bellows was played by Judy Carn at the age of 26. Bright, lively, and full of that swinging 60s sitcom energy, Sheila brought a different kind of spark into the Bellows family circle. She was not one of the regular faces, but her appearance had that quick, playful guest star feeling the show used so well. Judy Carne passed away in 2015 at the age of 76 after pneumonia. Her life after sitcom fame had plenty of rough turns, but viewers still remember the wild comic energy she brought to television. She became famous as the "Sock It To Me" girl on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, turning one little phrase into a full pop culture stamp. Sheila's appearance feels like a tiny time capsule of 1960s TV. I Dream of Jeannie already had NASA, magic, and bright sitcom chaos, and Judy Carn brought that extra flash of mod-era personality. Even in a smaller role, she had the kind of energy that made the screen feel busier and more alive. Erwin Winkler was played by Harold Gould at the age of 42. Smooth, confident, and just a little too polished to be harmless, Winkler brought that classic guest star charm into Tony's already complicated world. He fit the kind of role I Dream of Jeannie loved, someone normal enough to belong in Tony's life, but perfectly placed to make Jeannie's magic cause trouble at the worst moment. Harold Gould died in 2010 at the age of 86 after prostate cancer. He had one of those careers where he could slide from comedy to drama without making a big fuss about it. Later audiences knew him from The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Rhoda, The Golden Girls, and plenty of other shows where he brought warmth, intelligence, or a sly little edge depending on the part. Winkler is a small piece of the Jeannie puzzle, but small guest roles were part of the show's rhythm. Tony's life only worked if outsiders kept walking in at exactly the wrong time. The more normal they looked, the funnier it became when Jeannie's magic quietly wrecked the whole situation. Jeannie was played by Barbara Eden at the age of 34. Bright, mischievous, and completely impossible to control, Jeannie turned a simple astronaut sitcom into pure 1960s fantasy chaos. With one blink, she could change Tony's house, his career, his plans, and usually his blood pressure. She was sweet, stubborn, glamorous, and almost always convinced she was helping. Today, at 94, she is the living heart of I Dream of Jeannie for generations of fans. Her career included film, television, stage, and later appearances celebrating the role, but Jeannie is the character that made her timeless. Even now, one pink costume, one crossed-arm blink, and people instantly know who she is. Jeannie worked because she was not just magical. She was trouble with a smile. Tony wanted order, NASA wanted discipline, and Jeannie wanted love, fun, and maybe a little chaos on the side. That mix made the show light, silly, and unforgettable. The kind of TV comfort people still return to decades later. The magic of I Dream of Jeannie may have started in a bottle, but its legacy still lives on through the fans who never forgot it. Which cast member's story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next Then and Now video.